Okay, and here we are again. You are a regular guest of the podcast, but please, what's your name and what brings you to JCON?
Yeah, hello. My name is Martinelli. I'm from Switzerland and I'm a speaker here.
Okay, and your topic is?
Return of the full stack developer.
Okay, full stack, I love it. I love building things from backend to what the people see. But why do you say return?
Because there is a tiny little framework called HTMX, and it was a bit overhyped maybe, but people adapted it and said, oh, we could do like server-side rendering again with the help of just a tiny library that adds dynamics to our websites.
What's the main thing I should know about HTMX before I start diving in the documentation?
HTMX is a JavaScript library that provides tags that you can add to whatever HTML element and make it dynamic. So you can, for example, have a div tag and then add hxget as an attribute. And then if the user clicks on that, a GET request will be executed and it will return some fragment that HTMX then will be replaced in the DOM of your HTML page. That's more or less how it works.
I have to be honest, I love it. I use it for one side project where I had some kind of a touch interface for a machine, and by clicking a menu button, you simply replace the center div with something else. That means that everything you see can be generated by any kind of language in the backend, correct?
Exactly. So it doesn't really matter. So you can use a static HTML page, in fact, and then call like a service written in Spring Boot or in PHP. It absolutely doesn't matter. So it's completely free of any technology.
So that means that you move back a lot of the rendering of how it looks like with diffs and spans back to the server. Is that an outdated technology which comes back, or is this a good technology?
That's a technology that's still around and serves a lot of use cases maybe. So to be honest, I prefer component-based web frameworks like Vaadin or even Jakarta Faces, because components are very important if you're building business application and have repeatable tasks to build, like a UI with a grid and a form, and you have kind of higher order components that you want to reuse from project to project. But if you're building quite small applications, or even if you want to use, for example, AI to generate the UI, maybe generating a template and then have fragments to replace dynamically by HTMX is probably a very good idea. And it's very simple to do that, yeah.
Just before we started this recording, you mentioned web development is dead, UI development. What did you mean?
Yeah, I just had a chat with another speaker, with Lovi, and he's also talking about that. But originally there was a talk from the CIO of Microsoft, and he said, don't invest in UI development anymore because everything will be chat. So either language or typing, doesn't matter. But the user interface in the next few years will become chat-based, no longer form-based, where you have to fill out many fields, just chat with the application. And so that means that the UI may become obsolete. I don't believe that, but that's the prediction. And also the business logic maybe go away somehow, because validation and understanding the data will be part of AI. But what will become very important is your database. So maybe as a tip already, take care of your database, make it consistent, make it fast, make it accessible. And then you're prepared also if that may happen or not. Yeah.
Can I be a little bit scared that AI will be in between everything? We don't know what's happening in these black boxes, why AI decides to return data in some kind of way. I'm a bit scared. What do you think?
Yeah, me too. So very scared, in fact. So because you really don't know what happens, and it's not predictable. So the problem is how, depending on what you do with it, you get a different result. You even get the different result if you do twice the same thing, maybe. And that's a bit scary, right? That's true.
Yeah, I find it very hard to believe that data interpretation of data can be handled by a system like that.
Yeah, me neither. So we were talking with Lovi and Pasha as well. He's also another speaker just before our talk here. And he also said, hey, we learned over the years that the computer exactly does what we want. So if we do it right, the computer does always the right thing. He's never wrong. And with AI, that completely shifts, right? Because you don't know if it's right or wrong by the end. So, but I mean, in my opinion, we are like in the kindergarten of software engineering with AI, right? Either it's AI integrated in application, even if it's AI with chat based or AI used to generate code. It's really early stage. And what we see currently is probably not what we will have in a few years, right?
So you're a bit optimistic about what it can bring in the future.
I hope so, because I was trying out like Junai and Replit and Augment and what else, Copilot and all of these tools, and I was a bit, disappointed, so to say, because it didn't do exactly what I wanted. Because probably also I was using frameworks that I know by heart, and it wasn't the way I would do that. And to bring AI to a point where it does what I want, I need to provide a lot of information. And if I have to write all the information in a chat, for example, then maybe I'm faster if I just programming, or even if I have the old forms, because going back to UIs are no longer relevant. If you have people that are working every day with an application, they can do that blindly, right? They know it by heart, how it works, what they have to do. And probably that's much more efficient depending on what data entry job do you have.
You mentioned databases are important, so having a good structured way of how your data is organized. You're also a big fan of Duke. Are those kind of tools important here?
Yes, I think because if you want to provide currently model context protocol becomes new, or it was introduced, and I know already some companies that are planning to create model context protocol servers for their own data, and somehow you have to implement that, the API. And if you already have a relational database, you can use Juke, and then you have type-safe access to the database, and that's some place where I see that could be very beneficial to use.
MCP, the magic word. It's the first time it happened in this. I already have 10 interviews.
Okay.
You're the first one who mentions it. It's a very big subject. I still don't understand it. So can you explain in 2 sentences what is MCP?
Yeah, I'm probably not the right person to ask that question.
I'll try.
But no, MCP is the idea to have a standardized protocol to interact from a chat-based or agentic AI with something else, right? So you can create an API, and the API is described with some description like Open API or SOAP or whatever we had, Corpa maybe. So in that, and then you can, for example, if you use Claude Desktop, you can integrate the MCP server there and say, okay, that's the MPC server. And then Claude will inspect that API definition and see, okay, these are the capabilities of the API. And now if you chat with that, Claude will see, oh, that's probably the topic that this MCP server can answer, and then he will call the MCP server. So it's a much easier way, because before we had like RAC as a possibility to add information to an agent or to a chat. But this is very complicated because you have to implement that. You have a vector database and stuff like that. And with MCP, you just can wrap your existing API, or you can wrap your data, or you can wrap your documentation, for example. So Markus Hellberg from the Vaadin team did an MCP server for the Vaadin documentation that you can integrate. So the ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT, Claude, for example, will not just guess how Vaadin works. It will consult or try to figure out based on the documentation how it works.
Okay, so that's my next test project. I was once inspired by Vaadin. He already had a documentation project like that some years ago, before we had MCP. With the Vaadin documentation, I used it to do something similar with the Azul documentation. So I can again have a little spy look at his code and how he uses that. Okay, any more predictions? Where is Java going in the next years?
Oh, Java will become much better. There's one feature. It's about nullability or not null types. So in most applications, you have the question mark to, for example, in Kotlin, you can tell, okay, this field can be nullable. But in Java, that's not possible. Everything is nullable, except the primitive types, for sure. But they can change that. So introducing a question mark for that purpose is not possible because it will not be backward compatible. So they will introduce an exclamation mark to mark a field as not nullable. And that's something that I really like because this gives much more expression to the language. Because today we're using like the checker framework, or we're using bean validation for that purpose with annotations. And I like annotations, but they could be overused. So you have plenty of annotations on the class that doesn't make it more readable. So that's something that I like. So what I want to say is Java is becoming much more modern. So it's already very modern, by the way, because with the 6 months cadence release cycle, that's perfect. But it will become even better. So it's my go-to language still. So I look at other languages like Kotlin. I was looking at Groovy in the past, or Scala, but I still prefer Java because it's my favorite language. Yeah.
Thanks. That's a very nice message to conclude. Thank you for your time and have fun at the conference.
Thank you very much for having me.